Hello, everybody. How you doing out there? It's June 1st, 2021. This is Doc Kane with the podcast, Marketers Who Can't Market, coming at you from Kobe, Japan. It's hot today in Kobe. Where do you live? Is it hot by you today? Probably June 1st. Summertime, right? And because it's summertime and it's hot, I'm going to make this kind of short today because they don't always need to be long. Sometimes I'm talking a little too long, I think. So let's try a little slightly shorter one. And if I had a guest on, I would do definitely a shorter kind of intro, and then we would talk for a while, and and then I would wrap it, and then it would be over. There's your hour. I don't have to talk. I don't have to tell long stories. So today, let's do that. Let's do a little short one. And today, I want to talk about this idea that I think, at least personally, that these days we've been kind of coached. Did I say what the podcast was? I didn't say, I don't think. So, welcome to the podcast. This is Marketers Who Can't Market, the place to go to learn about new ideas in marketing, maybe things you should read, places you should visit. You can commiserate with the rest of us who are stuck. Basically, the place to go if you're a marketer, a small business owner, a podcaster, sure, a blogger, anybody who's in marketing and getting a little stuck from time to time. You know, you thought you were really good at your job and now you're not so sure. That's what we do here. We talk about that sort of stuff. And today, like I kind of said, I want to talk about the idea of reducing your exposure and your desire for exposure to larger audiences. I want you to think about perhaps trying to shrink your circle of influence and interactivity instead of expanding it. Because everybody thinks we should be expanding this number these days, right? Go on social media, have 1 million Twitter followers and Facebook, this and that, groups and pages and Facebook stories and Facebook videos there are now. I'm inundated. I only use Facebook for advertising, and now there's this friggin' videos module that I can't seem to get rid of on my home screen. Another noise, right? Instagram and Pinterest and fucking Tumblr and God knows what else. And then you have television if you're dealing with it. And you have YouTube, where we are, and radio if you occasionally turn on the radio. You have cable television. You have newspapers, magazines, then it's endless array of stuff, right? And then because you have this endless array of stuff, you have endless array of people that you have to talk about and associate with and sell to. If you're trying to find a base of people to reach out to, most companies go way too broad in the beginning. And they're going after people that they probably shouldn't go after, and they're wondering why they're not having the success that they could probably have if they just shrunk the audience a bit. Started small, right? So, this is something that can make a really huge difference, actually, in how you live your life and how you run your business, and particularly if you're a small business owner or a solo entrepreneur, which is basically the kinds of things I end up talking about, because that's what I am, right? I'm a one-man show for the most part now, but I've had companies where I've had a stable of freelancers that numbered upwards of 80, and I've worked for large companies. I've worked for a bank. I worked for Aon Insurance as a freelancer, but Aon, the largest insurance company in the world, M&M Mars and Amazon, all these big-ass companies. And I've worked for teeny tiny little shops too, one-person businesses where I was the second person or the third for a little while. And I learned over time that, especially as I worked in sales, that I had much, much, much greater success when I shrank the pool of targets than when it was broad. And it seems, if you think about it, it seems to be the opposite of what you would want to do. You want more leads at the top of the funnel so that you can push people out at the bottom, right? Yes, you want more than you're going to eventually push out, but they don't all need to be in there at once. And so that's the angle, right? Have you ever heard of this concept called Dunbar's number? Dunbar's number, I first read about in some book a few years ago. It wasn't Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell has referenced this story, but I've not, surprisingly, read any of Malcolm's books. He wrote about it in Tipping Point, I believe. But I think I read about this in some sort of history book, honestly, but I don't recall. But anyway, it's called Dunbar's Number, and it was kind of came to be in the 1990s by an anthropologist cat named Robin Dunbar. And he basically, through research, came up with this, recognized a certain pattern in primates and their brain size as it related to their average social group size, right? And basically the premise of the theory is that you can only really retain relationships, meaningful relationships, with a certain number of people. After that certain number, I think maybe somewhere upwards of 200, 150 to 250 people, you become incapable as an individual of kind of maintaining any kind of real bond with people beyond that number. And so this plays into social constructs and all sorts of things, right? And if you think about your own life, I mean, if you were to look at your social media feed, I guarantee you can say there's lots and lots of people that you don't actually know that you're quote unquote connected with or to. It's very easy to kind of look at this and say, oh, well, that makes total sense. And I think it does as well. Over the years, other researchers who have tried to look at this idea and this specific number that he cites, which is, I think, 150, and they've done other research that suggests, well, maybe it's lower, maybe it's higher, actually. And so ultimately, as a community, the scientists who are looking into this theory decided to say, well, the number's kind of hard to call, but the idea seems to kind of have at least some merit, and there's enough things that you could point to in society to where it does seem to kind of ring true, right? So think about that. When you're thinking about trying to expand your business, what could you do? How could you benefit from maybe shrinking the pool? Here's one thing that I do. So one thing that I do when I'm doing sales outreach is I always cap my initial target building list to 200. And I keep it at 200 because it keeps it manageable. And then as I whittle down the list, so they're all suspects at once, right? People I suspect could be a good target, but I don't know really anything about them other than they kind of match a profile, right? An audience profile. And so 200 people go into the list, and then I start calling them or emailing them or doing both and sending them maybe a piece of mail. And I have a whole big long sequence that has proven very successful over the years that I use, and it's very personal. That's the other advantage. So like this theory suggests, you cannot have relationships with people over a certain number, right? And so when you're doing sales outreach, you have to your message has to come across as being genuine. If you know anything about me and read anything that I've written over the years or talked about in an interview or whatever, I'm all about being genuine because that's what moves the needle. That's what makes the difference when it comes to real selling. People can see through bullshit. You, as a person, when you're trying to polish your presentation with bullshit, feel inherently not good about it. And that also can be felt by other people. You have to try to be somebody that you're not. You have to try to be saying some sort of phrase that you can't say. And it doesn't work. It's just like here in Japan where I teach English students how to kind of speak in some sort of comfortable way with regard to English in the hotel industry. And sometimes in their books, they'll learn things like certainly and madam and ma'am, and these sorts of words don't necessarily roll off the tongue, especially if you're learning English as a second language. And you can see the pain in the students' faces when they're trying to say certainly. So I tell them you don't have to say certainly. You can say sure, or you can say yes. It's a hell of a lot easier to say those words than it is to try and force yourself to say certainly. The same is true with sales, right? When you put on airs, people can pick up on it. But if you keep the group size small, you can do a really good regimented approach, top of the funnel on downward. And as people drop off, as people become or identify as not attractive targets, then you replace those people with other people on your list. But I would suggest at least that you're not like doing that with every person that goes out. You add a new one. You don't need to have the list always at 200. You need to cycle through it and do it in chunks. Maybe 10 people go away, you put another 10 in. You something. I tend to just kind of keep going down till it probably is about half, and then I start to kind of pump it back up again. It depends on the kind of selling that you're doing and the rapidity that they exit the funnel, right? 1-to-1 is probably too much, but find your own chunk that works best. And that's it. That's how simple it is, right? It works. 200 people. Find good targets first. So identify your people, and I would recommend, by the way, so if you listen to my book reviews podcast, 52 Weeks of Reading, I just finished my second week. I mentioned this book called Marketing Made Simple by, God, I keep forgetting this gentleman's name, Donald Miller, I think, the Story Brand author. And I said last week that I finished Marketing Made Simple, and it was really good. It had lots of good frameworks and stuff, but I hadn't yet read Story Brand, so I started reading it today, and it's quite good. So this part I was going to say about finding out who your good customer is, sometimes that's hard for people, especially if you're in a business that operates across a variety of product categories and things like that. It can be very difficult. But this book will help you whittle that idea down so that you can find 200 good prospects. And you can find out that answer in his book in the first 30 pages. So even if you don't read the whole thing, which you should, because there's a lot of things you can execute on in this book, you'll get an idea as to how to identify and come up with a sales pitch, if you will, that isn't really a pitch within the first 30 pages of this book. It's a good book, worth your time. So that's it. One other thing to mention, though, social media. It's kind of these days, I feel social media, the need for it as a marketer tends to be perpetuated by people who benefit from suggesting it's important. So this is kind of always true, but I'm really, really feeling this a lot lately with the social media networks. They've become, I believe, not so useful, and they probably were never really that useful. Twitter in 2007 and 2008 was quite useful for one-on-one contact, particularly if you were a communicator and you wanted to deal with other communicators and marketers, or if you wanted to deal with journalists. It was a very rich place to be. Not so much anymore. Facebook, many people I know in the small business world, particularly online marketing, don't use Facebook for anything other than advertising. It's an advertising platform, and it's good at that, and maybe you should only really be using it for that. Instagram, how many people are like promoting the idea of using Instagram as a business tool? I mean, really, I don't see it. If you can provide me with really good case studies as to how Instagram has like just blown up a business and that you couldn't do your business without it, then maybe it's worth considering. And that business would have to be something that's not entirely consumer and trend based. If you have a normal kind of business, if you will, you're an accountant, you're someone who's in the consulting industry, Pinterest, Instagram, like really show me how that works. I love being convinced of things I don't believe in. Or I love being convinced that my opinion about things I don't believe in, rather, is incorrect. So please do that. But it's got to meet those sorts of things, right? I think what you read out there is you read a lot of people saying, oh, it works, try this, do this, do this. but it's a very, very small, tight niche area that sees certain kinds of results. You see it with online marketers who are driving a hard message about the fear of loss, and people who are wasting their lives away on Instagram and these other social media places buy into that. So they're always going to say, "I did this." The creators will always say, "I made this much money," or "I did this much business on Pinterest, and I did it on Instagram." Okay, maybe, but what's the product and who's the audience? If the audience is on those places, and then, or excuse me, what kind of audience is on those places, and why is it that they're buying that product? You'll be able to tie things together in a more concrete way, right? If you're, a personal trainer in a specific town, you're gonna have some difficulty finding an audience even on those platforms. If you've created a course or a product and you become kind of like this Uber marketer, then okay, maybe, but that's going to take time too, right? So think about where you lay your eggs, where you want to hang out. Go small. Start in your neighborhood. Market in your neighborhood if you're one of these people, right? Do uh, anything you can dream up. Free whatever promotion that gets you attention. Um, Reach out and get to know press people. Get to know people who know other kinds of people that you do not know. Read a book by Keith Ferrazzi named, it's called, I think, Never Eat Lunch Alone or something like that. That cat has really good ideas in that book, and it's kind of dated. Not dated, but it's old at this point. I think it's at least 10 plus, maybe 15 years old at this point in time. But his main takeaway was he started to kind of put together these dinners, I think, him and his wife, of different people that he knew that had variety, or that came from a variety of backgrounds and had different kinds of jobs. And because they were interesting people, these gatherings turned out to be a thing that people wanted to go to, and everybody connected in a very, very natural, non-networky way, right? Do something like that. If you're a translator, yeah. If you're a personal trainer, if you're a teacher, no reason why you can't do this. As a matter of fact, and I'll close with this, one of my buddies in college put together a lunch group, a breakfast group, and we called it the Breakfast Club. He called it the Breakfast Club. It met every Wednesday morning in Chicago. And I wrote about this in my book, Fat, Dumb, Broken, Lonely. Never be fat, dumb, broken, lonely again. And it was a weekly meeting that he kind of hosted and put together. And there was an attorney there, an accountant, a land developer. There were two other gentlemen. Was like a IT guy, some other cat, and me, a freelance writer. It was the picture of this Ferrazzi model in a way, right? And we always had something to talk about, and I was kind of like the broke guy in the middle of this sea of super connected wealthy people. And my buddy runs a funeral home, or did at the time, and it was wonderful. And it was just a bunch of people hanging out and having breakfast. And then other people started to come as well, and I think we never really had more than 6 or 7 people at the table. It was a nice gathering. And sometimes if I couldn't make it, there would be another guy there. Maybe one guy would come in once, and then we wouldn't see him for 2 months, and then he would be back again. Do that. Do that sort of small marketing in your world to where you can make a difference. If you work in a national environment, then you have to try something a little bit different, right? But if you're local, that works like a beauty. So check out Dunbar's number. Read about it. Plant that idea a little deeper in your brain than maybe it is right now. And think about what kind of fat you can trim from your relationship body. What kind of leaves you can trim from your relationship tree. And get on with really doing some concrete, true, personal, genuine business and see what happens. Try it for a month. Try it for 2 and see what works. If you're running your own show, it's an easy thing to do. I think you'll see some quick results, basically. I can almost guarantee you're going to see some quick results. So that's it. Not exactly short, but shorter than yesterday by 10 minutes or so. So have a wonderful day, night. Like, subscribe if you dug this. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, which we'll probably start doing hopefully in a month or so, please email me at doc@neohornhustle.com if you're interested in that sort of thing. Okay? Take it easy. We will catch up with you tomorrow on Marketers Who Can't Market. Take it easy. Bye-bye.